Shabbat Shalom. I am Rabbi Lauren Werber from Congregation Beth Adam, a congregation in Cincinnati, Ohio, celebrating Judaism from a humanistic perspective. I'm so glad that you have joined me, whether from near or from far, as we celebrate and acknowledge Shabbat together. We begin with a reflection from the Likrat Shabbat prayer book. A great pianist was once asked by an ardent admirer, "How do you handle the notes as well as you do?" The artist answered, "The notes I handle no better than many pianists, but the pauses between the notes, that is where art resides." In great living, as in great music, the art may be in the pauses. Surely one of the enduring contributions which Judaism made to the art of living was Shabbat, the pause between the notes. And it is to Shabbat that we must look if we are to restore to our lives the sense of serenity and sanctity which Shabbat offers in such joyous abundance. We give thanks for the notes and for the pauses as we welcome Shabbat with a simple song.
Bim, bam, bim, 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 bam, bim, 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 bam. Bim, bam, bim, 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 bam, bim, 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 bam. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Bim, bam, bim, 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 bam, bim, 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 bam. Bim, bam, bim, 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 bam, bim, 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 bam. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom.
We continue now with the lighting of the Shabbat candles. Night seeps up from the ground. Light falls from the stars, distant, icy, ancient beyond all who came before. But the light of Shabbat is warm. The light of the Sabbath is ours. The light of the Sabbath is of this time, of this place, of lives that know the past only in a dream. As we kindle these lights, we create a place of warmth. As we kindle these lights, we welcome this time for reflection. As we kindle these lights, we stake our claim. And while these lights burn, this time is ours. Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or ba'Shabbat, blessed is the light of Shabbat. May we discover the ability to feel the pain of others, work for others, among others, and there come to feel a part of that to which we belong. May we discover the ability to be alone so that we can go out of doors each day among the flowers and trees, among the snow, among the birds and all that live beneath the sky of stars and planets, and there come to feel a part of that to which we belong. May we discover the ability to sit in silence so that we may hear not the voices of others, but our own voices, the beat of our hearts, the sound of our breath, the utterance of our soul, and here come to be a part of that to which we belong. And may we discover the ability to slow down, to stop, to appreciate, to reflect and rejuvenate. May we discover the serenity, the peace, the love that is Shabbat. And here come to feel a part of that to which we belong. Let there be love. Let there be the peace, the serenity, the love that is Shabbat. We join in song.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Yada. Understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms.
Earlier this week, I had the pleasure of recording a conversation with Reverend Mary Carson, who some of you met at the celebration of welcome service back in November. Reverend Carson is a cherished friend of mine. And aside from that, she's also a priest who serves at St. James Episcopal Church in Westwood. We connected with each other after the winter holidays to reflect on our experiences and on the wisdom that our holidays may hold for one another. I hope you find our conversation meaningful.
All right, Reverend Carson, so glad we get to talk. As I mentioned, we're going to talk a little about Christmas and Hanukkah because we both just finished celebrating them with our communities, and then about what we can learn from each other from our holidays. So the first thing, before we even get to that, is how was your Christmas celebration, and anything stand out that you want to tell us about?
It was really wonderful. I've been concerned ever since COVID about whether or not people would choose to come to Christmas services anymore because attendance has declined significantly. But we actually had really great congregations, and even on Christmas morning, which most churches don't bother having a service that day, but we had 36 people, which is a lot for us, particularly on Christmas morning. So it was good. It was very good.
home Christmas has sort of taken over for Christmas morning, I think.
Yeah, exactly. In most places, right? Most of my colleagues don't bother trying to do a service that morning, but it's become a thing here.
I think it's lovely. And I think people are starting to consider when they want to be back. And it's nice.
Yeah,
back
exactly. Yeah, I don't know what your attendance has been like, but ours has been sort of gradually creeping up, which is heartening for
right.
me.
Right.
So,
Nice to see.
yes.
So can you tell us, and I'll give a very abbreviated Hanukkah story as well, if that would be maybe helpful for you even. But can you give us a quick synopsis of what you're celebrating when you celebrate Christmas?
So the sacred version of Christmas, as opposed to the secular version, which has totally consumed American society, is focused on the birth of Jesus. I think it's important to realize that there are two very different stories about the birth of Jesus in the Gospels. The one that dominates is the one from Luke, which has Mary and Joseph going from Nazareth to Bethlehem and Jesus being born in a manger there, and the shepherds and the angels and all of that part of the story. But we always kind of like stick in telling Christmas pageants and things like that, the story about the wise men coming to visit. And that story actually is from the Gospel of Matthew, which has a pretty different, much shorter, and not nearly as much fun as Luke. But that one includes the wise men, and so they always get included because dressing boys up generally as kings with gifts and all that like makes for good drama. But
you have a lot of kids that you need to give parts to, and
yeah, exactly. But just a little piece of trivia, so your members of your congregation can impress their Christian friends if they want. The story of Matthew does not actually say that there were three kings. It just simply says that wise men came from the east. The reason we say that there are three is because there were three gifts. But as our previous conversation, you pointed out that there must have been at least four, since apparently tradition would be that somebody would forget their gift. But you can tell that. You can always ask people with like, oh, how many kings were there? And people will say three. And you're like, oh, no, actually, it doesn't say that. But the darker element to the Matthew story, which from our conversation seems to connect somewhat with Hanukkah, is the whole bit about King Herod. The wise men came, they went to Jerusalem, met Herod, the Roman proxy ruler, who was a pretty demonic guy, and wanted to know where this new Jewish king was to be found. And Herod didn't know anything about it, and he sent them off to follow the star that they've been following. And they got to Bethlehem and realized that Herod did not have their best interests in heart, and particularly the best interests of Jesus in mind. And so the great line at the end of that story is that they went home by another way. Herod had wanted them to come back to Jerusalem, but they no, we don't think that's a good idea. And then it gets much darker. Mary, Joseph, and Jesus go off as refugees to Egypt for a couple of years. Herod comes in and kills all the boys under 2 that can be found around Bethlehem. And so it's that whole fight against the powers and principalities that we tend to forget about because we really like the whole baby Jesus bit and candles and light and all of that. But
you're right, though, that there are a lot of parallels there. I want to get there,
yes.
but
yeah,
this is what happens when we have these conversations. You just brought too many things up. So we're gonna go in a slightly different direction, because I think the motifs are so interesting that you just mentioned, and how they parallel pieces in Hebrew Bible, right? So we have Pharaoh and the killing of the firstborn, and I didn't remember this piece of Herod killing the babies from way back when I've read. The idea that they went home by another way in the story of the binding of Isaac in Torah in Hebrew Bible, after this whole trauma happens in the story, Abraham goes back, but we don't know where Isaac goes. So there's this changing of the path perhaps because of a realization of what had almost happened. So it's interesting.
We should have had this conversation last week because I ended up preaching about it last Sunday. This would be really helpful.
Next year. But it's helpful for you to lay it out that way, and also to realize that we have more than one story. And for those of us who read our Torah in terms of looking at why did this come together and how and where is it similar, and where do things agree with themselves and where do they not, I think it's important to realize that Christian scripture has those same issues, and we're always choosing. We don't have time tonight to get into the why of it, but we're choosing which pieces we tell and how, and that's impactful, and there's always a choice. So it's interesting that like you said, Luke might be the better story, and that's why. Who knows? So I guess you did give us kind of the bare bones story that we're basing this on. I think you got there. So Hanukkah, for those and in the Jewish community, we don't all know the basic story. We kind of know similarly the stuff that gets told all the time. So a real short version of Hanukkah for you and for my folks. It's a rarer holiday in that it does come out of histories of sorts. So something did transpire that historically, as opposed to this being entirely a religiously oriented festival. So 2nd century BCE, we're talking, and we have we have the leader. We get different names. We can go with Assyrians, Greeks, because of how the kingdom worked, oppressing the Jews in certain ways. But when we get to the lessons, we can talk a little more about it. We also had a certain openness and Jews assimilating into that culture and still practicing certain aspects of Judaism. But eventually, things get more and more restrictive, and the temple is defiled by the Assyrians, and the small band of Jews, who are often called the Maccabees, revolt. And if we want to talk miracles, the larger miracle would be their victory, in that they were very small in number, and they have essentially they create a guerrilla warfare situation, and they're able to rededicate the temple. So Hanukkah means rededication. And then much later on, we get the story of the light in the temple, which is the part people know. So again, we have what people know and the piece that's really being celebrated. And what happens is the rabbis later see that this is a military story. It's not a religious story. And God is absent from it. And miracles are absent from it. And the story of the oil is added, that they find when they rededicate the temple, a cruse of oil that one would think would last for a day, and it miraculously lasts for 8 days. So we celebrate that as well. So I hope that was coherent, Hanukkah in a nutshell.
It was coherent for me. So, and I may go share this with my congregation if I can, just so they get
why it's nice to talk. So I can speak for myself. I know Christmas as birth of Jesus, right? Savior is born. And I think when people, if you ask somebody what Hanukkah means, they say candles burn for a long time, right? So those are our stories.
Yeah.
If we want takeaways that go beyond that, because those in themselves only take us so far. What can you give us a Christmas takeaway that would be meaningful to our community?
So there's actually kind of a third story. If you go to the Gospel of John and the beginning of that, which is a completely sort of philosophical, theological take on it. But it's all about the light shining, the Word becoming flesh, which the Word being Jesus, and then the light that shines in the darkness. And that is often what I end up focusing on. And it's part of the reason for in the Northern Hemisphere, Christmas comes in the darkest time of the year. The solstice. A lot of the traditions around Christmas really were based around the solstice rather than religious kind of meanings. So that whole idea that no matter how bleak things might be, that God always provides that light that can shine and give some hope in the midst of everything. So particularly this year, in recent years, that's been my major Christmas theme, because it's been such a hard 5+ years.
Right. Very much, in so many ways.
Yeah.
It's interesting because that's probably my main Hanukkah message in terms of light, right? So we don't have the Jesus piece. We don't at Beth Adam. We leave the God piece to individuals to figure out. But the notion of hope and light, and however dark it is, hope can be kindled. And how do you create, essentially, light that lasts in darkness? So kind of the same.
Yeah.
The same messaging. That's interesting. Anything else you want to share? I'll give you a little bit of Hanukkah after if you want.
Oh, geez.
We can go back and forth.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not paying any attention to time, so I don't know how much.
I'm paying attention. Another 5 minutes, maybe. We'll be all right.
Yeah. Most Christians don't really know. I mean, they know something about lighting Hanukkah candles if they're at all self-aware. I actually think you're giving us more credit for the most part in knowing anything at all about why those candles are being lit. I find it, I'm always wondering, like, what is it like to live in a culture so dominated by Christmas? And, as the commercialism expands, and so it's like October through December, and Christmas music starting God only knows when. Like, it's what's it like to have to live with that?
I mean, I'm speaking as one person. I want to. I think it's like anything else. It has its benefits and its challenges, right? I mean, Christmas lights in the darkness are pretty wonderful things. People being joyful and loving and having this extra element of sort of kindness and grace being extended, that I really felt that this year too. Just the mood is different in a good way, right? The other side of it is that when something's happening that's not yours, you become much more aware of who you are, right? And make choices. And I think for Jewish people, we all make choices of what pieces of Christmas, if any, we are comfortable either being around as part one, right? Or embracing, if that's a choice people make. So are we comfortable celebrating Christmas with Christian friends? Are we comfortable going to a Christmas party? Are we comfortable having a Christmas stocking on our door at work because that's what we're on our, because that's what the company does.
Yeah.
And then, are we comfortable with Christmas lights? Does that have a meaning that works for us or doesn't? So I think we all make different decisions around it. I'll say for me, anything that is in the generic, right? Spreading joy or helping someone else to celebrate is comfortable. Anything that places religion in the public sphere, or makes me othered because
Right.
I'm not. And that doesn't mean exposure doesn't make you othered, but anything that makes me feel othered or invalidated is problematic. And that line's hard to find. But I find it, I mean, I could do with less Christmas music. It's fine with it, but not for so long. But I find it, the joy of it and the love of it to be very hopeful, right? And light. If we're talking about light.
Right. Exactly. We can unite around that.
Around light, right.
Important.
And what that means, right? I do want to say a little bit more about the lessons of Hanukkah, because we don't have too much time. And I think, I don't know, I think it's relevant in our world. So I think the piece that we miss, and as Jewish people, we often miss as well, is this piece of Hanukkah that's about thinking about what's worth standing up for and how far you'll go standing up for it. Because you can't risk your life and your happiness and your security for everything. But what in our life matters so much, as it mattered for the Hashmoneans, for the Maccabees, to stand up even against the odds, to say, I can't give this piece of me up, no matter what. But the other side of that, because the Maccabees themselves become fanatics, they have this sense of what I would say is false piety, and become oppressors themselves. So the other side of it is, how do we keep that in balance? The sense of particular identity and it being important to us and our values without going to an extreme that then itself becomes dangerous. So I think that's one piece of Hanukkah that I think relates in the outside world. The other one is this fact that I mentioned, that Jews were assimilated in many ways, and in many ways that were positive. And that balance of how we live, that's your Christmas question in a sense, right? How do you live in multiple worlds and keep your integrity?
Yeah. And I don't know nearly enough about first century Judaism to sort of understand, but I would just sort of toss in there, because I think we are only beginning to understand sort of the place of where Mary was in particular, as a very poor, unwed teenager from Nazareth, which in early first century was a backwater village outside of Sepphoris. Sepphoris was where it was all happening. And for her to be willing to say, as the story in Luke portrays it, of, the angel coming to her saying, you're going to bear this child. And for her to be like, okay, sure, I'll do that. and knowing everything that unfolds, and, that in a lot of respects, they were so utterly different from who we have become as Western Christians, who, we're not oppressed in any way, shape, or form. I know there are those who would say that we are, but we are not. But sort of like, for us, I think trying, as a Christian leader and preacher and all that, trying to help my people understand what it took for them to do that. And part of the Lucan story, the reason they end up in Bethlehem, aside from fulfilling the prophecies, was that they were told by Emperor Augustus that they had to go to be registered because they were doing a census, which was all about the Roman occupation of that time. So kind of similar, not really entirely, but it's all about the digging deeper into the story and really understanding what's going on.
Right. And certainly some similarities. And as you were speaking, it was interesting because when we first talked a little bit in the past about Mary, right? What struck me as you were describing things is that the authors chose that Mary, who was this poor, unwed teenager, is the vessel for holiness. And there's a statement there about, a very strong statement there about who matters in the world, right?
Yeah.
And again, it parallels Moses in our story of the Exodus going, I'm slow of speech, don't make me do it. And God saying, yeah, you're it. Right. And also coming from humble beginnings in that story. But as you were speaking now, it never occurred to me, Mary had to kind of say yes.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, right? The when do you say yes? It's not just she had the, I guess, good fortune. It caused a lot of what we call surus, a lot of troubles. But that need to be open to the experience and say and have the courage to
Right.
embrace it.
Yeah. I would love to talk sometime, either in a video or just about the parallels between Hannah and Mary. We talk fairly often about that.
Oh, wow.
The Song of Hannah from 1 Samuel with Mary, because there are lots of parallels in that.
I'm writing it down. You can see me looking down.
Yeah.
I don't think our community knows a lot about Hannah. So that would be
that's
great.
outside the Torah.
Well, it's in our Bible.
Yeah, it's in your Bible, but it's not part of.
It's actually traditionally read High Holy Days, so it's there, but it's not. We don't spend a ton of time. So that would be fabulous, and I would love just parallels in general. I think would be an interesting thing for us to look for and talk about. My goal with this conversation was just to kind of wrap up our winter holiday season and recognize that there are things we share. There are things our holidays share, and also things we don't share, whether it's the particular message of the holiday or the belief system behind it, but that we can learn from. So I really appreciate that you helped us get there, and I'm sure you'll be back because we kept coming up with other things we wanted to talk about as we were talking. So
I hope so. I really, really do. I love being able to learn from you. So it's mutual.
I feel the same way. Hopefully our communities, despite being almost in different worlds, even though we're both in the Cincinnati area, hopefully we'll get together soon in some way as well. And thank you very much.
You are very welcome. Have a great day.
With thanks to my friend, Reverend Carson, we now pause to reflect and remember as we recall those whose lives have touched ours and who are no longer with us. Everything, everywhere comes from one source. Our lives, all life springs from that cause. Each thing, everything is made of the same matter. Our lives, all life is inseparable and of that ground. We are, each of us, uncommon expressions of that source, an intelligence unfolding to live one certain life. Our earth spins through space, incredibly alive. Our nature and the nature of all that lives is to flourish and then to die. And everything everywhere must eventually cease. Our life, all life, must return to its field. All of us, each of us, resigns ever so humbly to become again, one again with the earth. We are, everyone, a source and a benediction of life. We recall all those whose lives touched ours, all those who have only us to remember, all those who died defending principles we hold dear as we recite our memorial prayer. Ein bide hamavet hakoach la korma shetamun balev. Death cannot take that which is locked in our hearts. With our tears, in our sorrow, we remember. With our courage and our strength, we do not forget. Acts of kindness, deeds of courage will remain. Beauty created wisdom shared is not lost. With our tears in our sorrow, we remember. Im dema'ot be'enenu be'et evlenu, nishmor al zecher ahuvenu. With our tears in our sorrow, we remember. Zecher tzadik livracha. May the memory of good people bless our days. In celebration of Shabbat, we lift this cup of wine together as a tribute to our past, as a blessing for our future. May the allure of its untold flavors beckon us forever to keep uncovering new branches, new roots that hold us together. Tonight, as we welcome Shabbat, may we find time to spend in our own quiet company and listen to the calling of our hearts. Bruchim hachayim ba'olam. Blessed is the life within the world. Bruchim hachayim ba'adam. Blessed is the life within us. Our closing song this evening is Eitz Chaim Hi. It is a tree of life. These words are written about the teachings of Torah being a tree of life for all of us. But perhaps the wonder and hope and peace of Shabbat could be seen in the very same way. It is a tree of life.
Shalom, 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 shalom. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it, and all of its supporters are happy. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it, and all of its supporters are happy. Supporters are happy. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it. All of its supporters are happy. Shalom, 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 shalom.
Thank you to Brian for the music he provided this evening. We leave you with our final words of blessing. May we know blessings those who are near. May we know blessings those who are far. May the Sabbath bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. May we know blessings through the day. May we know blessings through the night. May health be for our children. All things soon be right. May we know blessings in our comings. May we know blessings when we depart. May we live each day with peace and wisdom in each heart. Ken yehi ratzonenu. May it be our will. May it be a Sabbath of peace and wonder and rest and rejuvenation. Shabbat shalom.